Do you know what people love to see on YouTube when it comes to Pizza Tower videos? P-ranks. And for good reason. It's a tight challenge that really tests the abilities of the player to play at their absolute limits and exceed them, which is why it's safe to say that Pizza Tower videos on P-ranks are everywhere on YouTube. But not so much in D-ranking the levels or the bosses. So why don't I sneak into this seemingly untapped market and apply some strategic sucking so that there's no pressure to succeed like all these other people who go for P-ranks? Actually, this challenge may be harder than most would think. To prevent making this challenge just be me getting hit over 100 times per stage to end each level with the absolute lowest score possible, since after all, I want this challenge to at least have some actual stakes, I decided to make there be an actual point to call this a challenge run. So to compromise, Peppino can take a max of only 9 damage per attempt at a stage or a boss. If we take 10 or more, well, we can go to hell. Let us now sashay down the list of levels. John Gutter being the first level of Pizza Tower is not too difficult to D-rank while hunting for top-ins. You do have to be really crafty though in avoiding a lot of the points, as you aren't given a lot of room to navigate, and there are a lot of enemies for how short this level typically is. Often, I'm grabbing cheese slimes just to put them down so that I don't hurt them, which can rack up a lot of points very quickly, especially if you accidentally start big combos. And it happens more than you may expect, just wait till later. As far as top-ins, the only top-in you really need effort to avoid is the third one. Peppino will climb walls when you grab them, so you need to time your grab to be just under the wall, so he'll dodge the cage with the tomato inside. Later in the game, top-ins generally will need to be searched for, while the first floor makes them pretty much impossible to miss, so I'll discuss the methods of dodging top-ins less as the video continues. Before too long, we're in pizza time, and some slick maneuvering allows us to reach the goal without much of a sweat. The cutoff for a D rank is 2,000 points, and we did so well at being bad at the game, we were even able to score 2 top-ins per run. Why not all 5 at once? Well, I'll explain as we make our way through the... Editing is my passion. Compared to John Gutter, Pizzascape is a rather huge difficulty spike. The D rank cutoff here is quite a bit higher at 2,500 points, but Pizzascape has a lot more points you need to worry about, and most of them are unskippable. See, to beat the game, we need to collect top-ins that allow us to challenge bosses and make our way up to the tower. But each time we collect a top-in, our score is credited with 1,000 points. That's already 40% of the way to a C rank in this level, which is already pretty hefty. But Pizzascape and a handful of later levels in this game features transformations which power Peppino up. In this level's case, a suit of armor. This armor protects Peppino from any and all sources of damage, but it also heavily restricts our movement options. We can double jump, but no longer slide and run. Well, now about a slope. This is necessary to pass the rats to block our way forward, but being in this heavy suit of armor also means avoiding making enemies like Fork Dice and Cheese Slime's collateral damage is rather difficult. But the worst part is the fact that you can only lose the armor by interacting with a priest, and the first time you do interact with a priest, you're hit with 500 bonus points. Keep in mind, there are 5 priests total in Pizzascape, and you're always required to use at least 3 of them per run. That's 1,500 points in addition to the 1,000 points top-ins give you. And all of a sudden, the 2,500 point limit is already hit. It doesn't help either that there are a fairly large number of unskippable points as well as gaps, which make it a real hassle avoiding accidentally knocking enemies to their death and into your score. At least before too long, Pizza Time will activate, and so after we escort the one top-in we can collect, it's just a matter of dodging what we can, taking whatever damage we're allotted, and letting our timer decay our points. Wait. Why'd my points stop going down? It turns out that Pizza Time isn't exactly accurate to how long your points will drop. In most levels, your points will continue to drop for a while after time is actually up. But Pizzascape is special, because your points stop going down quite a while before your time is actually up. At least most of the top-ins provide a lot of leniency for us to collect them still, but then there's the matter of the tomato once again. Unlike John Gutter, where the tomato is tricky because you have to dash over it, the tomato here is actually more out of the way, though in a more sinister, twisted monkey paw-wish kind of way. To rescue the tomato here means you have to actually pick up an additional suit of armor and interact with a 4th priest, meaning it will cost you an additional 500 points, meaning you have to be significantly more careful not to go over your point limit here. It's still doable enough, which is honestly really surprising to me, but yeah, Pizzascape really sucks. Since I want to cover this challenge in the order I did stuff, let's talk about Pepperman real quick and bosses in general. Bosses in this game are simple in how scoring works. Your rank depends on how many hats you have left, plus the extra hats if you have any. Not so much the damage you've taken. Pepperman just requires I take 9 damage throughout the battle, and then I win. If I play correctly, I'll have 3 hits left. Let the fact that I pulled this off first try distract from the fact that I forgot to actually keep track of my HP, okay? Thanks. Where John Gutter had one topping that was tricky to avoid, Ancient Cheese has 2. And the ones not as tricky may demand a bit more foresight than I was willing to invest in. Besides that though, nothing too major. The escape sequence took a good bit of time to get used to since the ground all the breaks under my feet, but once I got the hang of it, we were able to pull 2 toppings per run. I did fail once due to being knocked into a large source of points and bad routing in how I got the cheese topping, but otherwise it wasn't too much to handle. The tricky toppings this time around were once again the tomato, go figure, and the pineapple. The tomato was a bit annoying as it was in the way in the room with bomb goblins, as you need to take a bomb to blow the rat up. You need to be quick to avoid missing your shot, and it seemed like good practice to take the bomb goblin with me instead by grabbing it from underneath the platform, so I didn't have to rush nearly as much with just picking up a stray bomb. As for the pineapple, the placement here is just really mean. There's a very tight gap you need to jump and grab at to avoid picking it up. It taking place during pizza time also meant you don't have a lot of time to really brace yourself. Just get a feel and push ahead. The fact that this is the last topping you can pick up in the level was my reason for picking it up last before bidding the Ancient Cheese to do. See, this is why no one likes pineapple on their pizza. They're like cacti, bound to hold water in them if you're desperate, but they're prickly. And would you want to touch one? No, of course not. At least unless you enjoy getting pricked. While the other toppings weren't as problematic, I do want to mention the cheese topping for a bit. You're going to want to grab it before pizza time starts, as otherwise, the only way to it will be littered with clocks that add to your score. All in all, not a bad time, but I can't comfortably say that for the next level in this game. There is not a more appropriate word for this hellscape than claustrophobic. Points in this level are borderline criminally placed, and a lot of them are unavoidable. The worst offender has to be near the end of the level where there's a forced topping to collect. That would be the sausage. And you must always grab it whenever you want to progress, so you need to play extremely carefully to make any progress at all. You have to find 2 toppings, not just 1, in order to benefit from 1 extra topping per run. What I'm trying to say is that the sausage is a real wiener. That already is bad enough, but then you have the rest of Bloodhouse Dungeon to subtract more cubits from your lifespan. One of the biggest annoyances this level has to offer is that it's very possible that just trying to play the level normally, you're likely going to take a lot of stray hits that results in you being launched to places you really don't want to end up being in. And not just from the pizza cutters either, but the lava, the pepperoni goblins, and get this, the freaking pincers. This level just loves to spam them on top of you, and you often have to just babysit them because unlike cheese slimes and fork knights, they don't know when to stop running. And if enemies fall to their deaths, even if you're not the one to actually beat them, it still adds to your combo meter. Often I have to grab the pinchers and anchovies that just seem bent on sending themselves to oblivion so I can properly fit like I plan to. Also, since there are so many hazards, it's not unheard of that on my way back up, I end up exceeding my damage limit and have to retry the whole level. A lot of points here need Pepito to use his super jump and shoulder bash to squeeze between all the toppings he can. The extra height uppercuts also can get you in midair helps a lot too. It often gives me just enough airtime to react to what's below me so I can avoid unnecessary gains to my score. Often it feels like there just isn't enough time to go around though, and so in order to actually have my score fall low enough, I need to stall. And there aren't any doors, so I end up resorting to climbing up the wall near the entrance and falling back down like I'm Tom from Tom and Jerry. And funny enough, as I'm doing this, the freaking Lap 2 theme starts playing. What? This took, I'm willing to bet, at least a dozen attempts if not more. And every single time I went to get toppings out of here, I needed my points to decay enough to fall to a D rank. We had some really dang close calls too. Oh, that was scary. That was so clutch. I had one more hit left to go still, too. Oh, that was too close for comfort. Maybe there was a reason that the Death I Deserve Aioli started playing beyond wonky programming. Wait, hold on. Gotta get the right outfit going forward. Perfect! And that right there is the first world. Huh. Looks like my report card in the 11th grade. Actually, slightly better. Oregano Desert is a level I struggle a lot with the P rank, but a rather easy-going level for this challenge. So long as you avoid the bulk of big collectibles and losing Kentucky Kenny's power-ups through damage or couch kicking you, it will be a breeze to stay at a D rank. You can dodge most of the priests in the level just fine too. In fact, only when it's outright required. And you can still handily score 2 top-ins per run with the 2,430 point limit. It also helps that the top-ins are no sweat to avoid, as you have to enter these marts to get one. And though some are more elaborate than others, they're by no means difficult, as even the mart with a priest has cows to knock the spice out of Pepino's mouth. Not a lot of tricky jumps, and you're also given a lot more room to dodge points. Get those 5 top-ins and head on out. Of all the levels in this game, this has to be the one that's the most bleak. And I'm not talking about the theme either. Waste Yard has a lot of points that are hard to dodge. No thanks to the many corpses Pepino tries to surf on if he makes contact. The Bandito chickens chucking candles everywhere doesn't matter either, since that can kill enemies for you that you're still given credit for. But the worst part of this level has got to be the transformation that takes place here, where Pepino becomes a ghost after touching a ghost mushroom. Much like the knight in Pete's Escape, you are invincible in this form. But where Pete's Escape has only 3 forced interactions with priests, or 4 if you're getting all 5 top-ins, Waste Yard has 5 that you're always interacting with, 3 before pizza time and 2 after it starts. That already sounds considerably worse than Pete's Escape, even given that your D rank cutoff here is 2,560 points, which is 60 more than the previously mentioned level. But the only priest you can skip, the third one, can only be skipped by backtracking after opening the way forward while you're a ghost and entering the secret in the same room. And this secret forces you to collect 2 big toppings and a bunch of smaller ones amounting to at least 350 points. Heck, almost 400 points in total. So instead of skipping 500 points, it's closer to only about 150. Unfortunately, not very effective. May as well say you're still forced to interact with 5 different priests at that point. And overall, you're worse for wear than in Pete's Escape. We can D-rank this, but that's without picking up any toppings at all. At least the points decay less longer than in Pete's Escape, but not nearly long enough to compensate for the forced 1,000 points toppings award you. At least, not before you start employing some glitches. Now I'd love to call this level impossible and ignore it up until the end of the video, where I then would come back and say, actually, maybe there is something we can do, but that feels dishonest. The truth is, I do know of a way this level can be done, but it requires taking advantage of a glitch I saw some speedrunners like The Real Yoshi and Uncle Joel pull off. I'm not really experienced enough to pull this trick off consistently, but I can at least explain how it works. You need the Bandito chicken to launch a candle that hits you as you're under the tunnel entrance that leads to Pillar John. Every now and then, on a fixed cycle, the chicken will jump and attack, and both of these behaviors on the same enemy make skipping John possible. Often what may happen is I accidentally crush the chicken Bandito trying to squeeze into the tunnel, but once I was able to demonstrate the trick being successfully pulled off, where a candle hits me as I'm under this hole, and in a fraction of a second, I'm able to grab the chicken Bandito and take it to where Pillar John actually is. My past self will take it from here. Got it. Okay. So that allows me to grab the enemy from beyond the cubby hole. But you have to you can't really dodge these top-ins either, I feel like. And you see that John the Pillar, right? So you can't just jump up here because you can't jump high enough while holding an enemy. Pepino doesn't jump high enough. And also, there's a matter of the block too, which after you break it, even if you could get the enemy up there, you couldn't throw it because John the Pillar has that block blocking it. And if you do attack it directly, then you're trapped because of those blocks. They just force you to stay in. So what you have to do is you have to leave the enemy here, and my mom is calling. Right, so as I was saying, you can't bring the chicken bandito up here because, well, he doesn't really jump high enough, I believe. So, also, welcome to the stream, The Noise. I will not be silent for you though. So what you have to do is basically you have to run down this on this decline. Be careful not to kill the bandito, by the way, now that you brought it over here. Break the block, possibly taunt so that you don't go too fast, and then head back out. Grab the bandito. Okay. Like this. Okay, I was a little too early. There we go. Now it's just a jump up here, and then we can just grab it and throw it. And here we go. And that's another skipped priest. That allows us to skip a priest entirely, as well as a bunch of points we really can't avoid as a ghost. And just like that, we are able to make our way back without much difficulty. Just beware of the pineapple topping. It's a bit in the way, but you can just jump over it. Similar story with the cheese topping near the beginning, but so long as you're not being too hasty, dodging it should never be a real issue. And just like that, we have collected a whole 1 topping from Waste Yard. If we really need more, we can come back to get more toppings from here, but if we can help it, I'd really rather not. Not even going to try and crack any puns here. Fun Farm is fun. There are lots of instances where you can interact with priests, as the gimmick here is you being puppeted by Morph the Chicken, like you're in a good Pixar movie. But all 4 of them can be rather easily avoided thanks to the many ways this level allows you to drop mort. Falling down pits, taking damage, letting myself get burned, all viable ways to choke the chicken off my head. There's really only one real downside to this level that makes it take more runs though to complete, and that's the fact that the pineapple topping is forced to be interacted with. So you have to grab 2 toppings per trip to benefit from rescuing just 1. It's not nearly as stressful as Bloodsauce Dungeon though, as the toppings here are significantly easier to dodge in general. The level is much shorter, and there are less hazards in general that make navigating much more forgiving, with there being less risk of taking too much damage by accident. Also, the rank requirements for Fun Farm factor in the priest, so all of them being skippable makes staying under the limit of 2,375 points to maintain a D rank is much more manageable compared to the level that has no priest at all to consider. 2 by 2, we got each and every 1 topping out of here, and Mortis of wishing he never left the PS1. Okay, that's too mean. If it's any consolation, we got the Mort Cube. One of the harder levels of World 2 due to all the points literally, well, littered around the level, but at about average cutoff for a D rank at 2,500 points. The gimmicks in this level involve either riding on sausages, get your head out of the gutter, to break through the rats blocking your path, or racing horses for the prize that is a whole toppin'. Personally, I'd rather let them win the toppin' if I don't intend on actually picking it up yet, but winning the race is normally not a big deal. Normally. Preferably, you should aim to win the races on your earlier runs through this area and focus on the toppings you can't be locked out of later. At least that made the most sense to me. Another concern in this level though are the cards that you can interact with that give you a point bonus if you touch all that match each other. For obvious reasons, avoid activating all cards of a given suit. You don't want to get any more points than you can discard to keep your D rank up. Only 1 is really tricky to dodge, but you can avoid the straight shot up by either super jumping and shoulder bashing to the side and just holding run to dodge the last card, or do what I do and run up the walls on the side and jump for it. I recommend the former. All the same, you can get 2 toppings at a time if you employ some good old strategic sucking, so go on in and try not to down too many points as you make your way through. Despite Waste Yard looking to be a chore to clean out, we have enough money to challenge the Vigilante at least. I actually remembered to count the damage I dealt for him with Pepperman, and this boss proved to be pretty simple. A good rule of thumb is to make sure you periodically keep taking damage so your extra hits aren't converted to being bonuses. Also, prepare for the draw with only 2 hats remaining. By now, you'll have taken 9 damage, and when the Vigilante is finished off, you'll get a bonus hat confirming you successfully sucked at this fight. D rank, 9 damage, so long World 2. To D rank, Crust Cove has the most generous cutoff to keep a D rank at 2,875 points. But to keep a low score here is brutally difficult. There are points littered all over the level, and this level also, to my knowledge, has the most priests to stand in your way. The good news is that up to 6 to stand in your way, only 1 of them is outright impossible to avoid. The bad news is that you're going to be in for a rough time avoiding most of them. The transformation you're subjected to here is rolling in a barrel. Your mobility is much worse as you can't jump very high and you have to roll everywhere. Not only that, but it can be difficult to make Peppino stop rolling, which can often lead to you making contact with priests when you really don't want to. As far as how you'd be able to avoid the priests, the first one is impossible. The second one would need you to clear the way with the 8 rats leading to the way forward, which by the way is almost 100 points doing that alone. But then you'd have to head back out and land on top of a pinnacle to take damage and escape. Safe to say, staying under the damage limit would prove to be challenging too. Not just because we're constantly getting hurt to minimize the points we get from priests, but Crust Cove has always been a level where you're prone to getting hit. A lot. And the cannon pizza goblins will often prove to be the biggest annoyance when trying to not hurt Peppino too much. You don't want to go through all of that effort to get your top-ins and dodge the priests just to then take too much damage on your way back and void your whole attempt. Trust me. And for that reason, the third priest is especially problematic. If you don't want to score a bunch of points, you'll have to get hit twice here, which would mean taking damage from the spit cheese in the beginning of the room, and then grabbing each one and placing them in spots where you're unlikely to hit them, and ideally where the goblins won't be able to blow them into shredded mozzarella. It was difficult to even find the viable solution here before deciding to just put all the goblins on one side so I could just hurry and hop between where the cannons would fire. And that would have been the end of it, but then this happened. Wait, what? So that happened. So instead of struggling to take a minimum of 2 damage, you can rather reliably just take only 1. A bit anticlimactic, but I'm really happy to find an easier way through this war zone of a room. As far as the other 3 priests go, one of them can be easily avoided. The other 2 though take some precise spacing and some considerable caution not to kill the one spawn goblin here during pizza time. You can just barely roll under with the rat staying intact, but it isn't consistent and you're more likely to hit the priest than not. At least if you do, you can just backtrack to him so the second priest is not an issue. And if you avoid both, the goblin should still be alive to break you free. As far as the last one goes, I have no idea how to reliably avoid him. It just feels like you need to just roll towards him, but somehow stop yourself before making contact. And even if you do, there's a topic you may not even want yet or already got. And 500 points ain't nearly as bad as 1000, trust me on that. This level is surprisingly doable, but I'm getting only 1 top-in for now. That really was not fun at all. As opposed to dealing with a transformation, we're tasked with learning a character entirely separate from Peppino in the duo of Gustavo and Brick. They're not as fast as Peppino, they don't have as much freedom with vertical movement, and they can defeat enemies just by jumping on them. As opposed to playing as Wario, we're essentially playing as Mario now. At first, I found these 2 to be rather uncomfortable to control, as your tools really don't give much room to avoid points as their attacks travel ridiculously far, and Brick can collect points while rolling if kicked. However, one of my fans, the Looney Mooney, told me how you can crouch while spinning as Gustavo, which allows you to end Gustavo's lariat early. It ended up being a very handy tip if I find it difficult to space myself while on the ground. And speaking of spinning, Gustavo's lariat is rather effective for squeezing in small spaces to avoid the many 100 point granting toppings that stand in our way. And a lot of his moves, much like Peppino, can cancel out others while in use. Sorry about the tangent, but in reality there isn't a lot to talk about in Gnome Forest. Most of the level is spent delivering pizzas to houses in exchange for toppins. Because of this, we're forced to just wait the 90 seconds out so the pizzas can get cold, and we're then free to just continue through the level as normal. The point cutoff for a D rank here is 2,375 points, which is high enough for us to reliably pull 2 toppins out of this level at a time. And though the cutoff is a little lower than we're used to, it's interesting to note that we can actually take twice as much damage in Gnome Forest than any previous level. Both Peppino and Gustavo can be hurt, but the damage they take only counts for the damage they take. So if Gustavo takes 9 damage and Peppino takes only 5, the methods for hurting them too much doesn't appear, and you're home free to end the level with well over 10 damage, despite losing a total of 700 points from enemies. I could be a stickler about taking 10 damage overall, but nah, this just gives more flavor to these levels and I'll allow it. Space. The one thing I feel like I don't have. being subjected to a bunch of difficult to dodge chunks of massive cheese asteroids and the 100 points each they dump on me. Shame that 5 of them are unavoidable too. The pain points here largely involve the cheese topping and the rocket that leads you to the second section of the level. The topping has 2 asteroids you have to smash through alongside about 150 points extra just from general toppings and enemies, while the rocket has a bunch of toppings and asteroids that can be pretty hard to avoid. It's doable, but you have to give yourself ample room to dodge them all. Now, I had nothing against cheese in general, but I totally cut out the asteroids if I could. They just gas up the place. Like Uranus. What? You expected me to say Uranus? Honestly, it's more likely you'll take this chute downwards and forget there's a big topping if you don't tilt to the side. The mushroom topping also needs you to smash through a meteor, but only one, so odds are you can collect 2 toppings at a time, but you'll want to collect the cheese on its own. The only other topping that demands a lot more points is the pineapple, which has 1 more asteroid you have to smash through. Just keep in mind that the D rank cutoff here is 2500 points, and be careful not to break too much stuff while visiting here, you'll be fine. I should mention also I did lose once here though, for an all around really stupid reason. I wasn't losing enough points and pizza time was up. It didn't help either that I was collecting more points while trying to build up space to run from Pizza Face, though I realized soon it really would not have helped matters anyway, so that was very unfortunate. This level is boring and half the time I feel like an idiot. And at the same time, it's Tit of Cross Co for the highest cutoff for a D rank at 2875 points. Keeping a low score is as simple as bouncing on the grease ball like a pogo stick, and then sticking it to get a nothing bonus. The toppings are also mostly out of the way, with the one exception being the mushroom. You have to jump over it, then collect it in the ball form during pizza time, but it's a tricky jump to make as you have to jump over the topping to avoid it. And often, I jump too late and my points are now too high to finish the level. Alternatively, you can just hit the ceiling just before it appears, but I unfortunately did not know that at the time, so heck me I guess. The one attempt I managed to jump over it though, I rushed back to the start, and the golf demon actually sends me like 50 feet into the air, and I'm caught by Pizza Face. As far as the other 4 toppings are concerned, you have to complete the courses or all locked behind. They're not particularly difficult to do, and though it can be less than forgiving to strike the grease ball in a way that you don't score more points, the bulk of points normally comes from just not getting a nothing bonus anyway. And it's generally a lot easier to keep a low score in golf when scoring low is the goal of the game. Just be mindful of your combo counter as it freezes while Pepino is teeing off a shot. Great for P ranking, not so much for D ranking. And neither are the golf demons when they're throwing themselves into your grease ball. It's also worth mentioning that the points decay during pizza time lasted an insanely long time here. I accidentally grabbed 3 toppings when I meant to grab only 2, and I reset out of frustration, but after that failure though, the Looney Mooney, you know, the fan I was talking about in Gnome Forest, he believed that the point decay would be worth looking into, thinking that it would last a long time. And sure enough, I made the mushroom mistake a second time. At this point I was checked out, so I acquiesced and found that I was actually able to get the points to decline for a long enough while as Lot 2 feed once again started to play, and I actually was able to come out with a D rank and 3 toppings. Pretty crazy, but hey, we take those. So at minimum, you really need only 2 trips to golf to clean the level out of all of its toppings, not 3. Pretty crazy, but hey, we take those. You could also use the burgers to help you skip the pineapple and 2 other golf courses altogether, which is just very handy as even though I still accidentally collected 3 toppings, we were rather reliably under the limit and didn't need to wait out pizza time. Despite this level generally not being very enjoyable for this challenge, it was at least surprisingly easy. Guess I should be thankful. And since we have plenty of money, we may as well silence the noise. You're given less health than with either Pepperman or the Vigilante, so instead of making sure you end the fight with 3 hats, you need to have only 2. So long as you keep that in mind, there should not be any issues at all here. Another D rank for us. Getting high up into the tower, it's to be expected that the later levels will prove to be problematic. Pick City meanwhile is not one of those levels. Like a regular desert, none of the toppings here are in the way at all. The only real exception is maybe the 3rd one, the tomato, but even that can easily be jumped over. The other 4, however, need you to take taxis to their location, and with how short this level is and how spread apart a lot of the big toppings are, it's really easy to D rank here. If not for that, there is also Grandpa Pepper who, though it takes 40 points to reach him, he can lower your score super quickly as Pepino if you need to lower your rank. So staying under 2500 points is generally a breeze. This is also a level where Gustavo and Brick are forced on you, but they're not as bad as in Gnome Forest because you use them for only about half the level, and there's much more room to dodge enemies with not as many toppings being in your way. And since you're given effectively 2 characters, that's once again up to 900 points you're allowed to lose to damage alone. I needed only 2 trips to clean out the Pig City, getting 3 toppings on my first trip and 2 on my second. If that doesn't say something as to how much you're allowed to suck, I don't know what will. Ah, the Peppy Bot Factory. Back to a more cramped but all the same decently doable level. We once again have priests to deal with, but just about all of them are skippable, I'm happy to say. The only real annoyance is the last one, but, well... Wait a minute. Thank you, Gustavo, for helping. Wow, that was a close one. Now that is meta. There's a few areas here where you can just stumble into planes despite aiming anywhere but their general direction. I blame the conveyor belts. As far as advice goes, be sure to use your super jump a lot, as you're going to want it for some more precise movement on the conveyor belts. Also, walls are your friend, as you can often skip a lot of planes just by scaling them. Surrounding the priests, often they can be avoided merely by taking damage before encountering them. For the first one, take damage before you ascend where the priest is, as you'll be stuck up there otherwise. The second and third go hand in hand, once you clear the way for the second take damage, and then both are easy to avoid. The really tricky one, however, is the fourth priest, as the stamper that boxes Peppino is in your way, and that means it's generally forced on you. However, I learned that you can actually dodge being stamped if you're quick to get out of the way. Of course, I didn't know that my first time through, and it looked like I was going to have to suck up 500 points and then burn them after the fact, as there are no enemies before the fourth priest. But well, you know how that turned out. Gustavo will really be the GOAT today. Just like that, we can get 2 toppings per trip, 3 trips to the factory, we're good to go. And good thing, because we really gotta go. Listen, I may be a 26-year-old man who knows all sorts of curse words, but that doesn't mean I'm gonna use them. So, oh shoot, this level can bite me. It's possible to pull multiple toppings out at a time, but this level is much harder to achieve that in compared to Peppy Bot Factory. Once again, there's a bunch of points we really cannot hope to avoid. Of our 2,500 point limit, 20% of that is eaten up by the priest at the beginning of the stage, as there are no enemies or water to free Peppino from the sticky cheese he's slathered in. The other issue is that a lot of this level forces us to ride in these cheese balls, just piloting us every now and then, which can also lead to uncomfortably higher combos than I'd like. In fact, a lot of the points in No Shoot are impossible to avoid. Even ignoring the skippable priests, often your way forward is just blocked otherwise, and the points are placed in areas where you simply cannot avoid them. So you can just quite literally fall right into a higher score, giving you no other choice but to reassess other ways to lower your score. The toppings all can at least be gotten one at a time, though the cheese is in a rather annoying location. One where I end up slipping right into it, and more than I care to admit. It also sucks because despite being given a generous amount of time and pizza time, it's generous for a reason. You have a lot of ground to make up if you want to get even one topping out of here. If this level has anything though, at least most of the priests after the first one are rather easy to avoid. So it isn't like Bloodsauce Dungeon, for example, where you have to really fight to make any progress at all in collecting toppings, despite feeling rather claustrophobic and often being at risk of taking too much damage. Just be careful and you'll get at least one topping per trip. Before going to Refrigerator, Freezerator, I want to look at Fake Peppino. This fight gives you the least amount of help compared to any other boss, but you're also given a hat after the boss HP reaches 0 twice and he starts chasing you. So keep taking damage throughout the fight, but make absolutely certain that both your health is not maxed out as you drop the boss's HP to 0, and that the number of hats you have left is an even number. It'll become odd as you're being chased, and making contact with Fake Peppino will deal 2 damage, not just 1. Well, really the game considers it only 1 damage, but it's 2 hats worth. Fortunately, the game judges your rank by the hats you have left and +1s, not by total damage taken. So with 1 hat left, you can reach the end and get yet another D-rank for your troubles. This leaves us with only about $20 left leading into World 5, which is coincidentally as much as I make actually for my channel members as well. Speaking of that, thank you so much to both MB Switchy and Splashy for your $10 pledges to the channel. Individually, you're both worth at least 1 toppin', and that's awesome. Okay, but seriously, We have access to every level in the game now, and we still have 4 levels we have yet to explore too. If we can clean them all out, that'll save us the trouble of revisiting the more tedious levels in Worlds 2 and 3, so let's see how it goes. I think this level has the most difficult one-topping to dodge of any level in the entire game. The mushroom is right in the most awkward possible spot, being on a tiny bit of floor with barely enough room to squeeze above it. I call this the poison mushroom, since if you get it early, you want to throw it up. On the bright side, it's early in the level, so it's easy to discard. The other 4 toppings can be placed in some awkward spots, particularly the tomato and pineapple, but the tomato just demands that you take it slow so you don't slide into it, while the pineapple just needs a good jump and you're home free. There's a fair number of points to dodge, but you're given a good amount of room to avoid most of them. And though the ice cubes often can't be avoided, even the few times one is broken, there are only 10 points, so you won't be hurting too much breaking a few. Super jumps will help you a ton through here, as long as you make a conscious effort to avoid points. I estimate getting 2 toppings at a time is not very unreasonable, so just go for that. If I may provide any advice though, try to count off exactly 9 damage before grabbing the Satan's Choice pizza, because once you do get that, everything you touch dies and you're invincible. And losing the power-up will cost you a force 1,000 points at the cow leading to lap 2, so don't do that. It's also a lot harder to not kill enemies when contact with you is instant death, and that means you can't grab them and put them out of the way. Though grabbing does cancel Peppino's screw attack, so if you ever need to squeeze through a tight space, that's an option to consider. Otherwise, there's no force toppings, no priests, you should be fine. Though I must warn you, do not trust the rank you see in the top left corner. The way this level judges your rank is inaccurate. The D-rank cutoff is not 2315, it's actually somewhere around 1900. If you go in and trust the score before you finish the level, you can expect a very rude awakening, as you may just have been bamboozled into a C rank you were never warned about. This is also to say that there's actually a lower D-rank cutoff here than in John Gutter, the first level in the game, and also the shortest one. That's just evil, but given this level has a piece that is named after Satan himself, why am I surprised? It has deception written all over it. It's likely you know this already, but Pizza Skewer is annoying for a variety of reasons. The ghosts that are always in your way, the other ghosts that haunt you throughout the entire level, and if I may add, led to more than my preferred admission of resets due to too much damage. Piecers who would snipe me a lot throughout the entire level. Yet damage is often on my mind here. Ignoring that, this level makes me want to go really fast to avoid contact with the ghost, but if you go too fast, you'll hit traps that just send you flying. And it's hard to say which option is preferable. I'll tell you what I did often though. I opted to avoid ramps as much as possible, given how many points they generally force you to take. So this level often feels like one where you'll want to wall jump a lot. Annoyances aside though, this level is pretty standard fare. Most points can still be avoided just fine, and you can still pull 2 toppings per attempt. The cutoff for a D-rank here is 2,250 points, which isn't too unreasonable thanks to the fact that there are no priests or forced toppings to worry about. Just try not to get too flustered. Though the toppings themselves aren't really hard to avoid, they tend to sneak up on you, and the last thing you want after doing a level this chaotic is getting jump scared by the pineapple topping during pizza time. It happens a lot if you get impatient like I tend to be. Anyways, don't make a sound. Bar none, the easiest level in the entire challenge. Managing your damage, keeping a low combo at all times, the pizza time point decay, trust me, none of that matters. Just collect every topping you can find and do it on your first attempt. And after that, just let Peppino mingle the animatronics. I mean, the funny topping monsters. You'll get jump scared. A lot. But there's also the occasional Oktoberfest, which sure as heck will be a hoot and a half. And yeah, that's the funny thing about Don't Make a Sound. Jump scares don't actually count as damage. You can just be going for a P rank the whole time, and you'll still be able to easily D rank while staying under the damage requirement, so long as you don't have a shotgun yet. Actually no, even with the shotgun this level is no problem. Just make sure you at least open the way to the first secret. From there, you can just put your controller down and just do whatever else for about an hour, then come back and D-rank the level. It really is that easy. I will still say the cap is a formality, but you should not have to be worried about a cutoff as high as 2,750 points anyway. That's pretty dang high. Having $170 after this level is a very promising sign. All we need now is at least 4 toppings from the last level and we're good to go. So what's war like?
popcorn.
It's the hardest level in the entire challenge, bar none. And it's also the absolute worst for saving toppins. Not probably, definitely. You can rescue only one toppin, the tomato. Why only the tomato? Because it's forced to be collected. Yep, you cannot pass it up, and you cannot collect any other because then you're eating 2,000 points from toppins alone, and you have a cutoff of only 2,687 points to be at a D rank. Why do I say only, despite being more than 2,500, which I consider average? Well, let me explain something vital about War. It's unlike any other level in the game. Here, the points do not decay at all. Ordinarily, you can lose about 1,000 points, if not more, to point decay alone if you're willing to wait long enough. But here, the only resource you have to lose points is taking damage. And since damage is rampant here, you need very precise play to take less than 10 damage. Now, this sounds like a miserable combination already. Damage is everywhere, you're dodging points basically wherever you can, and your only source of losing points needs to be managed carefully. This is also about saying that you have a combo counter, which you don't want to let rise too quickly, so you need to be very wary of that too, unless your score goes up higher because heaven forbid you go too fast. But the worst part is you're not even allowed to take your time here. In other levels, if your time is 0, you're still alive until Pizza Face catches you. In War, the timer hits 0 and stays 0 for like 2 seconds, you're dead. There's no way around it. So you have to be fast and careful to have the potential to score even one toppin. And points here are laid out in a rather sadistic way for this challenge because they're put directly in your path. So you have to either react or memorize where the points are as you blitz right through or past them. As much as we love to hate pineapple, the War tomato is nothing but rotten. Wish I could throw it, but I can't. The fact you're forced to use a shotgun here also leads to a lot of issues, because you're stripped of one of your key tools for gaining quick speed, and halting momentum because Pepito can't grab, which has led to me grabbing the cheese toppin more than I care to admit. It also means that while trying to open your way forward, you're prone to scoring more points you really don't want to pick up. It demands a lot of trial and error just to shave off tens of points and keep your D rank alive. And man, do they all add up. So... Oh, wait, what? I did it, did I? Did I just pull that off? Oh my god! This will likely remain the hardest part of this challenge. All the same, I encourage you to try this while also staying under a limit for damage. You'll soon realize this is not a challenge for the faint of heart. Unfortunately, the fact we got only one toppin out of War means we don't have enough money to challenge the final boss. We're 3 toppins short still. On the flip side, we can always go back to either Waste Yard or Crust Cove and get more. On one hand, Waste Yard is shorter and generally easier to avoid taking damage in, but on the other hand, Waste Yard also has a glitch required to successfully pull toppins out of, and I don't fully understand how it even works. Often this level can feel like luck, as despite knowing this glitch is 100% consistent if you know the proper execution, I don't know the proper execution. I ended up pulling it off once, but I died before leaving the level while trying to outmaneuver Pizza Face since it wasn't at a D rank yet. Just heartbreakingly close, really. And after that attempt, no matter what, I just could not get the glitch to work. And I really had only so much patience before I was ready to give up. After all, Crust Cove is still an option, and I'm happy to say that despite being more difficult, I at least can consistently avoid 3 of the otherwise 6 required priests here, which means, albeit with a lot of frustration due to plans I really don't want, I'm able to collect the last few toppins I need from here, all the while de-ranking every single time. Having now collected a total of 86 toppins and currently holding $210, I'm now allowed to finally challenge Pizza Face. This boss, unlike others, does not have a rank to award the player, but the Crumbling Tower of Pizza does. For the sake of this video, I beat Pizza Face first try. And so you know I did it under 10 damage, I'll also show you this extended clip of my first attempt with the Crumbling Tower of Pizza, where the first time I take damage, the 10 damage message appears, cueing me in that I failed and must restart. There's a fun fact for you, this game carries your total damage over from the final boss to here. By the way, just saying, I wasn't keeping track. There are no priests, no top-ins, nothing really but enemies and points that are in your way, and you need to try and minimize collecting. I was ready for this to take me many tries, but after resetting just once, I was able to D-rank this pretty much right away. I had only about 2 seconds left, but a win is a win. The pizza tower crumbles as we all escaped, Papa John is left to rother away, and Peppino tells us exactly what we wanted to hear since we first started. You suck! And I'm sure as heck proud to. So to answer the question, can you beat Pizza Tower with only D ranks? Turns out, yes. Yes you can. In fact, you can even beat Pizza Tower before it was patched, where you needed $250 to challenge Pizza Face. Just barely, and it means that war could have been avoided entirely. So there's some food for thought. So if you're interested in any other low percent challenges I've done, I've got videos of me doing similar runs in Paper Mario and games similar to Paper Mario, as that's where my bread and butter. Otherwise, hey, thank you for watching this whole video, and I do truly hope to see you later.